Today, there's so much in our lives that influences us, our environment, the people around us. Sometimes we don't even know what's influencing us, and that's what we're here to talk about. Welcome to the Influence Today podcast with Chet Tart and Terry Lyle.
Welcome to another episode of Influence Today with Chet Tart, Terry Lyles. We're broadcasting for Venture X on PGA Boulevard in Palm Beach Gardens. I'm glad you're all here. If you're looking for a place to temporarily or permanently set your business, Venture X is the place to go, and especially here at PGA Boulevard in Palm Beach Gardens. Terry, welcome back.
Thank you.
We had a great conversation last week about the Bahamas and stress, but I want to continue that a little bit. You know, there's a lot of coaching I do with CEOs and top echelon management in the area. And there seems to be a trend when I'm talking to people about their business and about how they affect the culture.
Sure.
And here's the words that come up all the time. It seems like a movie that everyone plays. And you got to think about it for 1 second. Does it play in your life? You know, I really don't have time. You know, I want to build a relationship with my staff, but I just don't have the time. Or there's a meeting that takes place and we go right into business because people hate meetings. Mm-hmm. And the last one is, you know, this was a very stressful week. Mm-hmm. And I'm stressed out and I brought the stress home.
Yeah.
It's the story I hear constantly. Now, there's a couple pieces to it also. I mean, some of the CEOs say, you know, I'm trying to make sure the managers are accountable. I said, are they accountable to you? No, not really, because technically they want to be liked. They want to be the CEO liked.
Right.
But you have to hold people accountable for them to trust you, right?
Absolutely. Well, and the challenge becomes, you know, if you're in a position that people report to you, you have to be transparent enough as a leader to let them know that they're open to come to you.
Sure.
If you're a manager, so to speak, or you're managing things and still leading people, because I believe everybody's a leader. You know, we manage things and we lead people, but most people still use management under leadership as a function of human capacity, and it's really not true, but that's a whole nother show. You have to be willing to be held accountable. The challenge is, are you willing to be held accountable to someone that you don't believe in?
Or
a
don't
system
like, or don't like. Yeah.
that you don't like or believe in.
Right, correct.
So that's where the disconnect really begins to kind of, from the human relationships, that begins to pull apart. And the only way to go back in there and sever that back together is to repair, find out where the breakage is and repair it. So if they don't believe in the system or the person, or they don't like the system or the person, or all the above that's in charge of them, that's something that has to be mitigated. And that's where coaching comes in to be able to say, look, here's what employee X said to me, leader Y, and I need you to know, because there's an issue, we need to have a resolution brought to this. And you got to work on that. A lot of companies look at that and go, that's just HR. Just go do your complaint with HR, and, you know, the leader's out making business. And but you know what? Every employee, in my opinion, in the company is just as important as the other employee. Whether you're the person who's the janitor, whether you're the sales director, whether you're the top salesperson, whether the CEO, the admin assistant, doesn't matter. Everybody has a life. Everybody has some element in that business, or they wouldn't be there.
Right. Let's drill down on one of them. One of your expertise is stress. Mm-hmm. So when I was today dealing with a CEO, he said, it's a very stressful week. I'm very stressed. It rolled over to the employees and rolled over to his home life. What kind of playbook should we develop for that person so that they understand where the stress came from, how to slow it down a bit, or maybe how to get out of that, constantly bringing it to every element of their life?
Was it? Do you think in that example that the stress was coming mostly from the work?
Yes, more the work, not the outside.
Okay, so
internally.
You
know, you get.
Yep.
Even I know they get pressured sometimes. Hey, this
Sure.
report has to be done. I'm not at my desk, but it has to be done by noon. Well, why didn't you tell me that yesterday? And I'm getting these, you know,
crisis creation
well,
management
the
stuff.
emails are more probably, you know.
Yeah.
Why are you sending me so many emails?
Right.
So that presses those pressure buttons.
Sure.
So the question is, what's the first reaction when that happens? Do you You can feel it inside. You feel it up here. Do I stop everything what I'm doing and handle that issue when this issue's over here? What kind of playbook have you put together for this? Because you're all about the stress and the pressure.
Sure. Well, the first mechanism of stress is that our body biologically responds
Negatively. Oh, yeah.
because cortisol, which is a stress hormone, secretes in the blood system. Within 15 to 20 seconds, your body reacts.
As soon as you see that email.
Yeah, because now it becomes threat challenge. Okay, so now it becomes a threat. So my body already goes into defensive mode, right? My stomach draws up
automatically.
Chemically. You can't even stop it.
Really?
No, you can't stop it. It's like blinking. You know, when you're hijacked emotionally and the cortisol secretes in your body, you cannot stop the flow and secretion of cortisol. It's already done. What you can do is recognize I've been hijacked. Okay, my button's pushed. What do I do as quickly as possible to convert that to a challenge? Take the threat, make it a challenge.
So I need a trigger to be able to think like that. It just doesn't happen if you
No.
because I heard you on the podcast, I'm not changing tomorrow.
Yeah.
So there should be a trigger that says as soon as you're stressed, do something.
The quickest thing to do is when you feel stressed, and the question would be secondarily to that, how do you know you're stressed? How do you feel stressed? Hey, your stomach clenches, hair goes up on your back, your eyes get squinched, every orifice in your body draws up, and you're in fight mode. Fight or flight.
Oh, I used to get emails from somebody that was always complaining. Every time I saw the name, I said, I'm not opening that email.
Well, and that's one way to do it.
I can't do that.
I'll deal with it when I'm ready.
So then I had to fix the email so that you wouldn't see the first 3 lines, and I fixed it so I just saw the name.
And then you already knew.
And when that name came up, I go, I'm not looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Because I know what it changed the chemistry.
It's
I
chaos.
could feel it in my head. I
sure.
could feel it in my heart.
Right.
I could feel it everywhere.
Well, so the first thing to do is, and this is what we learned years ago in sports science. Same thing we train athletes or any kind of performers.
Share
right?
that with us, yeah.
When you feel something that's trigger, I call it hijacking.
Right.
You know, because that's kind of the best term I can use, because literally it's like your body just took over your logic. It's what road rage is about. Somebody cuts you off and you turn into like Jekyll Hyde like this. You just, you can't control it.
Correct.
You can control the effects afterwards, but you cannot control the secretion when that trigger is pushed. But what you can do is recognize it. So when I feel that happening, the quickest thing to do is to breathe and take 2 to 3 breaths, just in through the nose, out through the mouth, and just don't say a word. Try not to react, and just let the oxygen dilute the chemistry in your body first.
Okay. First one.
Simple. Breathe.
But before that, you need a trigger to remind you. Even if it's a little card that says
It could
breathe.
be all, and that's what I get into. So it could be a lot of things. It could be, I am not my environment. It's a card. It's a pet. But typically what happens, because cortisol is so powerful, the trigger almost needs to be someone with you. It's really hard to not react.
Really?
The chemical.
So you need to have a
rocket fuel.
trusted partner.
It helps.
Trusted.
That's where accountability comes in. Okay. So that's why a good partner, whether it's a spouse, a team member, can look and go, hey, man, just, hey, it's okay. You know how many things I've dealt with like that, but I'm just doing with you right now. When you see something escalating, you're like, I'm just going to pattern interrupt. I'm going to step between them, and we're going to have a conversation.
So you want to interrupt their pattern of going down that line.
Because you can't help yourself sometimes.
Right.
But if you are alone, training is key. So it's knowing that if I feel my body react a certain way, like if that happened to me right now, and it has. I've been on the air before, and I get a call, and it's weird, and I've had to just like not act like it bothers me. The first thing I'm doing is just I'm going to deal with it later. So you can table it. I don't have to react to it. Even though I feel the response, I don't have to react.
But there's
I can pause.
These cell phones have made us react to everything.
If we allow it to.
Yeah.
If we allow it to. And I liken it to our minds with the computer, since you brought that up, like a pop-up. How annoying is a pop-up? You're trying to work online, and it's like, your computer's going to restart in 30 seconds. I'm like, and I can't even get past it unless I pay attention to it, because they built a fuse on it that if you don't exit out, it's going to blow your computer up. So you don't have a choice. But here's my choice. I just zoom it down. I'll deal with it later. Because you know what? It'll come back. You get 9 times to restart your phone on an install before it does it automatically. Last week, I had probably 8 of those 9 times that was trying to install an update on my phone while I'm doing an interview like this on the phone. And you're like, dude, this is not a good time. I can't reinstall whatever you want because I'm a little busy here. That's stressful.
Yeah, it is.
But I have the button to be able to let it go. You see? So the first key is knowing in my mind that I don't have to react to what I feel. I can react to what I know. And as I feel this, I'll process and think a little differently about it as I go.
That is not
zoom
easy.
it down.
That
It's not
is
easy.
Not easy.
That's why it takes
you got to
training
practice
and coaching.
Right.
Because it's, again, we've had this conversation. It's the blind spots. No, all of us have them. We don't know what we don't know about ourselves unless somebody points it out. But listen, I've gotten a little better over the years. No one's flawless at this. And especially people that are close to you, whether it's at work or at home, that know what your buttons are, and they just bump into you and hijack you. And then you're just like, and then you got to deal with the fallout. It's not easy. But you know what? If you have no mechanisms of, hey, I am in control, I can breathe to change my physiology, because it's really hard to beat physiology. If you're a diabetic and you haven't eaten in over 3 hours and you're insulin dependent, and your body gets so weak, if you don't put the insulin in your body by food or by insulin injection, you will go into a coma. Your body is stronger than your logic. You can say, I am not diabetic, I am not diabetic, I am not diabetic, and you will hit the floor. Okay? So physiology is our DNA. It's powerful. So that's why the first thing to trick is physiology. Breathe. If you can just remember to breathe. If I get upset, breathe. If I get angry, breathe. If I'm confused, breathe. Because the breath that's negative is short, shallow. So if you breathe deep and fast, deep and slow, either one of those two,
slow you down.
20 seconds. It's what race car drivers are doing and martial arts and Lamaze. Women having a baby. Breathe. Breathe through the pain. You're going to feel it. You knew this was going to happen. You had almost 38 weeks to contemplate this, but guess what? You had no idea it was going to feel like this, especially if it's your first one. It is what it is. But I taught you how to breathe. That's why Lamaze is so important. And what do you have in Lamaze? You have a breathing coach.
So when
They're reminding you.
when you coach people, how do you get them to remind themselves to breathe? What is your technique?
Well, it can be several things. It depends on what their strongest trigger is inside themselves. Like, as long as I can be
Well, the CEO,
aware.
let's talk about the CEO.
Yep.
He was stressed, and he brought it home, and he brought it to his employees. He didn't tell me why he was stressed, because I just hear that word constantly. We're stressed. I mean, who's not stressed?
Right. That's like saying, well, we have gravity. Well, that's why we're on the planet.
Right.
So you can't blame gravity. You can't blame stress. You're not reacting to it correctly.
So after breathing, I should say, hey, you need to breathe. Okay, great. And then we leave the room and they forget. So what tricks, techniques, triggers do you offer them to say, this is going to remind you all the time to breathe?
Well, and here's where the power comes in, because if people, and a lot of people don't do meditating whatsoever or any kind of relaxation. In the training I do in corporate America, about 80% of the people do not do any meditative state training whatsoever. They're on, they fall in bed, they go to sleep.
Right.
So they go from beta to alpha to hopefully realm, and it doesn't work like that, but that's what they're hoping for. And that's why people stay fatigued, because they never get there, because they never shut down during the day. So the first thing to do that's really powerful is just to know that if I'm feeling that stress, I need a physical trigger. And so if I'm relaxing, or if I'm exercising, because you can use either the high recovery, which is exercise, or you can use the low recovery, which is the stillness, because they're both recovery. When you're training, working out, and or sitting still, meditating, just being quiet, use a physical trigger. It has to be something that's abnormal, okay, to you. So you may take your thumb and a finger and push it together. One of mine is doing this. It's putting all my fingers together, because it's a way to recircuit your nervous system. And it's putting my fingers together and holding it like this. So if I really get where I'm like not sure what's happening, I just kind of do this. and people wouldn't even know what I'm doing. I just told everybody. So now if you see me do this, you know, it's probably not good. But what I'm doing is because when I'm in my meditative state, when I'm in my prayer state, when I'm in my worship state, I'm doing this for some of that time. And I'm logging into my system to say, this means calm. This means I'm in control. This means that I know who I am.
So you have to be totally aware of yourself. You got to be awake.
You have to load that in.
Yes, you got to be awake. One of the things that we talk about is self-aware leader, a self-aware person. You just got to be and notice aware, but aware of what people say, words that are being used.
Yep.
Because without meeting you, the guy would have been saying, I'm stressed, and it would have meant nothing to me because hey, we're stressed. But now that after we can talk about performance under pressure and stress, that word just jumped out. They were like in bold letters, stress. What are you doing? Why are you buying into that? And I kept thinking about that, and I said, well, I'll talk to Terry about it today. There's got to be, since you're doing this and you're working with athletes and race drivers, there's got to be a playbook and
of course
how to lower that stress.
And it depends on your personality too. But I mean, here's the way that I go through it in the book: is mentally there's a trigger, emotionally there's a trigger, spiritually there's a trigger, physically there's a trigger.
For each one of those.
For each one.
Okay.
But you don't need to do all four of them. You just need one of them, and the other three will follow because it's a centrifugal force. They're all interconnected. Mm-hmm. It's what's your strongest anchor. So mentally, I used to say to people, I mean, I'd walk into a conference room at times, and there'd be people like literally like arguing, and you almost think they're going to fight. And I'd be like to myself, I'm like, are you kidding me? And there were times when I'd be like, wait, did anybody die in here? Are we talking about life and death? And it shocks them. They're like, well, no, we're talking about the budget. Then why are we here when we could be at a 5? We're at a 10. We're talking about money. We're not talking about life and death. So that's a mental side. It's a verbal, mental, boom. Emotionally, it's understanding that I just got hijacked, and breathing. Even though breathing is a physical attribute, it emotionally connects because they're connected together. Oxygen as well as our energy levels are interconnected. Spiritually, it could be like, you know what? God loves me. I'm still an okay person. I'm going to do the best I can to get through this. And physically, it's your energy level. Maybe you just need to get up and move. Maybe you need to get out of the situation. One of the best things to do if you feel like you're in a confrontation is just, excuse me, I need to go. I'll be right back. And just move. Get out of it. Because sometimes removing yourself could save you or save them. So all those are triggers.
Physiology. Get up,
absolutely,
move, and come back. Right.
And I told my wife this early on. I said, look, if I walk out, I'll never walk out unannounced. I'll just say, look, I'll be back. That means I got to get out of here so I don't say something stupid more than I already have, and I don't react worse than I probably could have. So I just leave. And she knows because I told her up front, and that's accountability. So when you have a leadership team, a management team, and you tell them, look, these are our mechanisms that we cope with. If you see me do that and I walk out of a room, but I give basically not permission, but almost a command that I'll be right back, I need to step out for a minute, don't judge me. Let me go out, because what I have to do is go out and scream and then come back in and we'll find a resolution. But if you don't let me go out, now we got an explosion, you see? So those are all triggers that you've got to allow people. That's why training and coaching is so important. Because as a management team and leadership team, you say, look, here's some mechanisms. What works for you? And you make a game of it. Well, that was what I need. I need to just walk out for a minute. Okay, cool. What do you need to do? I just need to be quiet. I'm going to be quiet and not say anything. I think you're dishing me because you're not talking to me. No, I just don't want to say anything stupid. Okay. So you walk out, you get quiet. What do? I scream. Okay. Well, then we know you're going to scream. Okay, so you got to find out where people are. And when you give people permission to be who they are, at least you're on the same page. There's rules, like driving. There's rules. Just follow the rules as much as possible. But without conversation, none of that happens.
So let's make this simple, that if you're under stress or you feel stressful about anything, the first rule of thumb is to breathe.
Breathe.
Take time.
That's
Count to 5.
Yes.
Breathe.
Yeah, just breathe.
Put your fingers together.
Yeah.
To remind yourself as a trigger.
If you train that way, you got to train that way in relaxation.
But you need a coach and you need a trusted friend to help you out.
That helps. Yes.
You can't do it. We were not made to be alone.
No.
The other thing I was told before we leave here is that when you're upset and you're stressful, that one side of the brain doesn't get oxygen, and that's the intelligence side.
Correct.
The emotional, erratic side gets all the oxygen,
Yes,
and that's what happens.
which is right
Is
brain.
that correct?
It is correct.
Wow.
Because that's a whole nother show probably, but what's interesting is about every 90 minutes, we have a primary and secondary conditioning in our body. So all of us have had colds before when one side of your nose clogs up and you can't breathe out of that side. And you're like, why is this side? Well, because if both sides did, you got a bigger problem.
You can't breathe.
You can't breathe. You're breathing through your mouth, and then you get a sore throat. And so typically about every 90 minutes or so, typically, we breathe out of one nostril first and then exhale through the other, and then it reverses.
It does.
And then
Didn't
we
know
go
that.
from left to right, right to left, left to right. So our body is wired for survival no matter what, which is amazing to me. I mean, we are such a finely tuned machine. So it's very interesting. So when you realize that our bodies are working for us, help it. That's why breathing is so important. So if you can just remember to breathe and know that whether you can breathe in your nose or out your nose, but breathe in the nose and out the mouth is the best way. Just by taking those breaths can regulate you and change. I mean, even of our sleep cycles, we're recovering. Every 90 minutes, you roll over,
I
you
was
look at the
told
clock.
that sleep is very important for your
Yes.
body to grow and get better and healther.
Yes,
That's
very
why
much
we're
so.
sleeping all the time when we're sick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please give us some feedback. Appreciate that. And please like us. Like is important. Please share it. And it's Influence Today with Chet Tart and Terry Lyles.